So when it comes to skip tracing, there's definitely some techniques that will help elevate your opportunities for success right away. And we'll go through some of these right now. Listen, skip tracing is an exact science. That means that the top data providers have an accuracy ratio of about 50 to 60%. Now, can you get more? Yeah, you could definitely get more than that. And how you do that has a lot to do with the data that you are pulling and inputting into the skip tracing provider like us at Skipforce, right? So a little plug, we give high quality skip tracing data, tier one data, the cream of the crop, but at a wholesale price. This is what we tell our clients. We cannot guarantee the success because it has a lot to do with what you guys give us. So what that means is that input data is going to be the biggest determination of what your output data, the quality of your output data. What does this mean? That means that if you are getting your list from a list provider and that list isn't accurate, isn't up to date, is missing some letters in the names or isn't formatted correctly, then it's going to come back with a really poor result. How skip tracing works essentially is that you're giving me a line item, John Smith at 1234 Main Street at Tampa, Florida. And I go through the database and try to match exactly John Smith at 1234 Main Street, Tampa, Florida, 77, whatever, right? If one little letter is off, say is Jon rather than John, if one little thing is off, it means that it is going to not match it correctly. So what that means is that you're going to get the wrong number or you're going to not get any numbers, right? You'd rather not get any numbers, truthfully, because that way you're not paying for it. But a lot of providers will just give you a bunch of numbers. That's why they call it a hit rate. They'll give you the hit, but even though they have absolutely no idea if it's wrong or right, or even worse, they'll give you a hit on anybody that's lived that property for the last 30 or 40 years, right? And that doesn't do any justice. So here's a couple of things that you want to do right off the bat. That'll help you out, right? One, obviously, you want to make sure that your input file is as clean as possible. When I say clean, I mean go through or have a VA go through it, make sure that all the first names and last names are separate and in their own column, okay? Don't put them together. Don't put like John and Jane and then Doe, right? Put Jane Doe, 1234 Main Street, John Doe, 1234 Main Street. So you want to make sure that the addresses are clean. No PO boxes. Can't skip through PO boxes. I don't care what they tell you. You can't do it, right? So make sure that the addresses are clean. Make sure everything's spelled out. Make sure that, there's a city, state, zip. Make sure all prefixes and suffixes are eliminated. So what that means is like doctor or, juniors or the third or something like that, right? Make sure all that stuff is taken out of that. And the other part is a little trickier. You want to make sure that the data you're getting is the most up-to-date data possible. Now, the problem with that is that most of you are pulling a list from places like PropStream or Batch or something like that. And you don't know when they update the repository. What that means is that if John Doe sells his house at 1234 Main Street 6 months ago, but they haven't updated it, well, you're obviously pulling that for a certain list that you think they're under, like say absentee, but it doesn't really apply anymore because they're not the owner of the house. And now you're calling or contacting the new owner, which obviously isn't going to sell their house because they just bought it 6 months ago. So how do you do this? This is going to be a little more technical, right? And we do provide the service at Skipforce for an additional charge, but you could do this 100% in your own business, and you got to get a VA to do it for you. You could buy the GIS map of the whole county, literally the whole county, on certain websites, and you could download it. Now, can you get it from the county? You can, but some counties are so big that you really can't download the whole file, right? It's best to just buy it. It'll probably cost about $300 to $500, somewhere around there. Then you put it in either Excel or another platform. You don't want to put it into a list organizer because it'll be too big and too clunky and expensive, right? So you can use Microsoft Access. And then what you want to do is like every single time you get a new list, you want to scrub it against that initial database. And what it'll do is that it'll match up the names, the addresses. And if there's anything that's different, it'll show you. In that way, you can make that change and pull that off your list before you submit it. That's something that we do, and that usually increases our conversion ratio by 5 to 10%. But it is an extra step, and very few people are going to do it. But the people that do it, they reap the highest rewards. Here's another one. You want to eliminate LLCs. Yeah, I know. You're probably thinking, hey, Mike, I want to get a hold of these LLCs. Fine. Take them out, put them in a different sheet. You're not going to get an accurate hit rate on LLCs. It's just not how it works, because LLCs, the way it is formed, is not conducive to skip tracing, because a lot of times you don't have an address associated with it. It could be a lawyer, it could be somebody else or something else, right? An LLC, best way to actually skip trace the LLC is go to the Secretary of State and get the members' names on it, and then use that, the members' names with the business address if you have to, and use that as a line item, as a record, right? But don't just put the LLC, leave that in there and ship it off, because that's just a huge mistake that people make. Trust, LLCs, PO boxes, eliminate all those, put them in a separate file, dig a little deeper, because you know what? If you're able to crack that list, you'll be ahead of the curve, because everybody else is just putting in the file and running it and hoping for the best. Another tip, you want to use different skip tracing providers. Now, the reason why I say that and nobody else is because we offer, the most affordable at the best price. So give it to us first, right? Because like I said before, 60% is going to be performing. That means 40% is non-performing. What are you going to do with those other 40%? Most people are just going to buy another list. It's such a waste, because you know what? Those other 40% are the hardest to get numbers, okay? Take that out as a non-performing number and run it in another database and see if they could come up with a number for that. Now, what you're going to find, though, is that they're only going to get maybe 10, 20% more. That's just the nature of it. But that 10 to 20%, hey, there's gold in there. So that's why we created a service called the Prime Number Generator, because this is such a needed thing, right? Most people are just throwing away those non-performing numbers. We could take those non-performing numbers, we could grade those numbers based by the activity level the last 24 months, and then we could see if there's another number associated with that prospect that has a better grade. And we only charge you if we could come up with a better number. That is such a big help, because what it'll do is that it'll give you that tough to find person that everybody else gave up on. So at Skip Force, we give you two solutions. We could either run it first, get the cheapest, then take that other non-performing, go to somebody else. Or if you're already using somebody else, take all your non-performing, come to us, we'll rerun it. And that way you don't have to spend double for your list. Hey, I hope that helps. Stay on the channel, click a like, ask a question. I'll be more than happy to answer it. On top of it, I'm going to be sharing a lot of tips on how to improve your cold calling outreach campaign.